So if you're thinking about using some carb cycling, in this video I'm going to show you how easy it can be and some of the amazing benefits that can come from cycling your carbohydrate intake. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So carb cycling is just adjusting the amount of carbohydrates that you're consuming in a day, a week, or a year. And in this video, we're not going to talk too much about who should or should not use carb cycling. There's some people doing a keto or very low carb diet that are not ready to use carb cycling. This video is just going to be about how to do it. So if you want to learn more about whether you should or should not use carb cycling, we'll put a link in the description below this video for our video on should I use carb cycling. So the level of carbs that you're cycling in or out could really vary from person to person according to what their goals are and what kind of diet they're eating now. And I know I'm going to hear from someone in the comments sections like, I ain't had a single carbohydrate since the premiere of Doc Hollywood. Ain't nobody need no carbohydrate. And the reality is that more people could probably benefit from reducing their carbohydrates than actually increasing them. But some people actually do need to increase the amount of carbohydrates that they're consuming to keep from creating some imbalances or malfunctions that can happen from maybe doing like a keto or a carnivore diet for too long. So in this video, we're going to talk about how to cycle carbs for someone who might be eating a high carbohydrate diet, but also some methods for those that are using a low carbohydrate or like a ketogenic or carnivore diet that might need to cycle in some carbs either now or in the future, because it'll really vary from person to person. So understand that the reality is that there is no diet that's right for every person. And anybody trying to tell you that one diet will work for everybody doesn't really understand how people or the human body works. So what we want to look at is these pink lines here represent our blood sugar. And I'm just doing like a scale of 1 to 10. These aren't actual glucose numbers, and I'm not doing actual insulin numbers. We're just looking at a visual representation to get an idea of how the body reacts when we consume carbohydrates. So what we look at here is the average person is going to eat like this. Like 8 a.m. they're going to have like a bowl of oatmeal and some toast with jam and an orange juice, like 73 carbohydrates. That's going to create a big spike in the blood sugar, and that blood sugar is going to crash down. But the insulin takes a lot longer to come down than the blood sugar comes down. And this is important when it comes to understanding how and why to cycle carbohydrates. This green zone here represents this optimal zone that insulin needs to be in so that the body can access stored fat and burn that for fuel. So we want the body to access stored fat and burn it for fuel so that we can fit in our pants. But also, we want to have a fuel source when the body runs out of glucose. We want to have a backup fuel source so that we don't bonk, and at 3 o'clock we don't even know what our name is and we can't get any work done. So we want to try and keep this insulin under control. And what happens is this insulin doesn't come down by the time the person's blood sugar does. So they're like, oh, I need a snack. Somebody said pomegranate juice is healthy. I'm going to have pomegranate juice and a banana, like 59 grams of carbs. So then they spike blood sugar again and send insulin up before it really had a chance to come down into that green zone again. And then for lunch, they have a turkey sandwich and some brown rice, and they spike their blood sugar way up here. And then insulin again is way up here and takes a lot longer to come down from that big spike. And then for dinner, there's like, oh, I'm just going to have a little salad and then maybe some rice cakes, another 47 grams of carbs. So before insulin could come down, they spiked it again. And then since they ate like a bird for dinner at 9 o'clock, they're like, oh, I'll have a few bites of ice cream. And then they realized they ate the whole pint and another 64 grams of carbs. So you can see that insulin never had a chance to come down the entire day so that the body could access stored fat and burn it for fuel. They never had a backup fuel source, so they kept either crashing and bonking, or they would come down here with their sugar crash and realize, oh, I really need a snack to just survive as a human being. So eating this way is really problematic because you're not only going to gain weight, the insulin being that high is going to tell the body to store more fat, but you can't access stored fat and burn that for fuel. So it makes it very difficult for people to lose weight and to have energy throughout the day because the fuel source gets burned up and there's no access to a backup fuel source. So when we're going to cycle carbs, We want to try and maximize the ability for this insulin to come down while we're sleeping. So the insulin can come down while we're not eating anything overnight, and then we get into this fat burning zone where the body can access a backup fuel source and also burn stored fat and get rid of it. So instead, for breakfast, if we have something like, a spinach omelet with maybe some tea and a little butter on the omelet, maybe some chicken sausage, that's 2 grams of carbohydrates. So we see that the blood sugar only comes up a little bit, and so does the insulin. You don't get such a big insulin spike, and when it doesn't have a high spike in insulin, then it comes down pretty quickly and pretty easily. And we keep this blood sugar on an even keel, so we have a backup fuel source, and we probably don't even need a snack after breakfast. And maybe somebody really does need to eat some carbohydrates. Maybe in our video, Should I Use Carb Cycling, they saw that, I really shouldn't be doing a ketogenic diet. It's not right for my body chemistry. I do need a little bit more carbs, at least on some days. Then what we can do is we can put these carbohydrates in the middle of the day, because we create a bit of a sugar spike here, which brings insulin out of that fat burning zone. But let's say that this was just like some chicken legs with a sweet potato. So that's only really 23 grams of carbohydrates. So you're not getting the same that you would like with a turkey sandwich or some kind of rice or something like that. So we just modestly spike that blood sugar, bring insulin up, but then it comes down a lot faster so that we can get into this fat burning zone again and access this backup fuel source before we get to dinner. So if we do this in the middle of the day, what that does is extends this window over here that started while you were sleeping. The whole idea when someone wants to bring insulin levels down is to keep it low as long as you can throughout the day and not keep spiking it up and down. So maybe somebody wants to have carbohydrates for 2 meals a day. If they have it at breakfast and at lunch, then insulin comes up here and it's already a little bit high. But then if they don't have any more carbohydrates like after 3 p.m., then they have all the rest of the day for insulin to come down and stay low, and then also the whole night while you're sleeping and into the morning. So another option would be that maybe you just have carbohydrates just at dinner. I do this a lot when I'm cycling carbs in, because carbohydrates can be pro-anabolic and helps us move into that anabolic state of our circadian rhythm, and that helps us sleep and rebuild and repair a little bit better. So some people might want to have their carbohydrates at night instead of at the morning. I'm okay with people doing either, testing things out and see which one makes them feel better or lose weight better, whatever they're trying to do. But the point is, when you're cycling carbs into a day, you really want to maximize these open windows on the ends when you're sleeping, when insulin can come down. So you either want to have no carbs here, maybe no carbs at breakfast, no carbs at lunch, and really extend that window from when you were sleeping and only put those carbs at night. Or you can wake up and have your carbs and then don't have any more the rest of the day to get that longer window. Or if a person needs more carbs in a day than just one meal, maybe they put them at breakfast and at lunch, or at lunch and dinner. Either way, they're extending that window of time of while we're sleeping to really maximize the ability for insulin to come down and allow us to access stored fat for fuel, to reduce the inflammation that can come from all this high insulin level that can create a lot of problems. So you want to extend that window either direction if you have that ability. Now, if you're generally eating low carb or keto or carnivore, and you're eating in a way where you're really keeping these insulin levels down most of the time, but maybe you've discovered that you might need to do like some carb ups where you have some spikes to bring yourself out of ketosis, or maybe you just need to include a little more carbs to keep from creating imbalances or troubles that you may be having. For a lot of people, that can take years to really create those problems. For me, I was able to eat keto and carnivore for 6 or 7 years before any trouble really showed up for me. So it'll vary from person to person, but if you found that you need to increase your carbs a little bit, then doing it this way in a day can be great. You still want to think about, I want to keep this insulin lower for most of the time. I don't want to just have some carbs here and then some carbs here and some carbs here, because insulin is going to go high that whole day long. If you're basically doing like a ketogenic or low carb diet, you're probably just wanting to infuse some carbohydrates to do temporary spikes to help your body be a little bit more metabolically flexible and still be able to burn fat for fuel well, but also process carbohydrates and glucose for fuel efficiently as well. So when you want to cycle in carbohydrates and do an increase of carbohydrates, it's really nice to just do it in one meal of a day. You don't want to say, oh, I'm going to do some carb up day. I'm going to cycle in carbs into my ketogenic or very low carb diet, and so I'm going to have Pop-Tarts and popcorn and pasta and all these things, and really kind of knock your body out of its groove, so to speak. I still like to see people just cycle them in a little bit, maybe just one meal a day or one or two. Or I may have weeks or months where I'm cycling in carbs more often than other months of the year. Some people may cycle this a lot more broad. Some people may do just a little bit, a couple days a week maybe. Some people might do this, they'll increase carbs for a week or two, and some people will do a few months at a time of doing a more carb intense program, but then go back to a ketogenic, carnivore, or very low carb diet for the rest of the year. And there can be reasons to use all those methods from person to person. The main thing to understand is when you're cycling these carbs, you're either trying to get the insulin a little bit lower and just doing a smaller spike when you feel like you need some carbohydrates, or if you're doing really low, you're just trying to pull yourself out of ketosis purposefully to include more carbohydrates to help maybe some imbalances correct themselves. So it's really about understanding what this insulin is doing and knowing where you want to put your carbs and the amount of carbs that you want to put in. How far do I want to pull my body out of this fat burning zone for a period of time? Do I just want to have a little bit of carbs, or do I really want to spike it? And do I find that I need to eat more carbs to pull myself out of that ketosis state? So the goals can be different from person to person, but as long as you understand that you're trying to manipulate insulin a little bit, then you'll be able to figure out what's going to be appropriate for you. So now, if you haven't already seen it, be sure to jump over and check out our video on should I use carb cycling to understand if you're dealing with imbalances that may benefit from using more or less carb cycling. I can't wait to hear about your results.